Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers, for the second straight week, lose to a 2-win team, this time the 2-10 New England Patriots in, I want to say stunning fashion, but I guess at this point, it's not so stunning after
It
what we saw
is.
last week.
It is stunning. History made. I mean, you saw the stat going around. The first time a team over 500 or like 8+ wins, and like there's the weird thing to it, had lost to a team.
Any team over 500 to lose back-to-back weeks against a team that is 8 games below 500.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Which is,
ugly.
again, people could say,
And
it's
at
one of
home.
those like super, yeah, both of these were at home. And you could say, well, that's a very specific stat, which a lot of the stats are kind of ridiculous. But that's still, even if that's happened, even if a team has played back-to-back weeks of a team that's 8 games under 500 in NFL history, let's say it's only happened 15, 20 times, to be the only one,
yeah,
to lose both of those games, even if the sample size is out of 20, that's very bad. That's not good. And when you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, who like to consider themselves, one of the storied foundational franchises of the NFL, that makes it that much worse. Listen, Mark, I mean, of course I have thoughts on this game. I have thoughts on what this means for the Steelers, what this means for players, coaches, a lot of things, and we'll get to that. I don't want to take up all of that time right off the bat. I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on the game, but I will say this right off the bat to not bury the lead. And I think you'll understand what it's taken to get to this point, I think, because we've obviously known each other for most of our lives, and on top of it here on the show, that I'm not quick to, make rash judgments. So I hope this doesn't come across that way, even though obviously this is coming in the wake of the two worst the worst 2-game stretch of Tomlin's career. I truly think that it's time where his seat is considered hot, at least very, very warm. And you have to say, is it time for the Steelers to move on from Mike Tomlin? I don't say that lightly. After this, the way that I'm now starting to see the locker room fissure, the way that this entire operation's been run the last 8 years, it's been a long, slow burn, but I think it really has come to the point where some serious, serious thought has to go into, has he worn out his welcome in Pittsburgh? But I'll get more and I'll expand on that more. But I'm just curious, I'll toss it to you because obviously that's a big thing for me.
It's huge.
To go
It's huge.
to. That's yeah.
I will say this first and foremost. God bless Mitchell Trubisky keeping the Bears alive. He's a Bear for life. With the losing, keeping the Panthers now. Panthers now have a 2-game cushion on the Cardinals and the Patriots. God bless the USA. God bless Mitch. That is fantastic. And so I was my first thought. My other thought, honestly, when I was watching the game, and it was one of those games, we joked about like, oh, don't watch it, go on a date night or whatever. Obviously, you're always we're gonna watch it, and knowing you as a diehard Steelers fan, like I had that extra little, all right, like what really can we take from this game? The biggest takeaway for me is I just to me it feels like it's getting to the point where what do we have to do as fans in the NFL, and what do we have to do as people who try to criticize the NFL and judge the NFL and analyze the NFL and all these things and love the NFL, all of these things. At what point in time do we just have to say, like, do we either need to change the rules some back to favor some of the defenses, or you just can't have a defensive head coach anymore? Like, you just can't. I mean, that was Bill Belichick and Mike Tomlin, who arguably two of the greatest coaches, in the history of the sport. Tomlin is built a Hall of Fame resume. Bill Belichick is a Hall of Famer. Maybe the greatest coach of all time. And these are guys that are defensive coaches in the game in 2023, and it looked like everything had passed them by. I mean, you look like what backup quarterbacks are doing with defensive coaches versus offensive coaches. It's brutal. And you can argue, oh, well, Mitch isn't good. Mitch and Gardner Minshew are in the same stratosphere, right? And look at what Shane Steichen's doing with Gardner. And he's been with Gardner, and Gardner had him in the system in Philly last year and this year. So 2 years with Gardner. Mitch has been in Tomlin's camp and in Tomlin's system for 2 years with Tomlin. And at times, it just doesn't look like they have a game plan at all. You look at what Bill Belichick's done with his quarterback play. You could argue Mac Jones is a backup and Bailey Zappi the backup. They were inept in the second half of that game, too. Now, the Steelers are a good defense. But, I mean, you look at, like, what Kevin O'Connell did week 1 with Josh Dobbs. You look like what Jake Browning did with Zach Taylor last week. Now that they had a full week of practices, he's going to be your starter and all this stuff.
Yeah, he throws for 350 yards and beats the Jags.
It's crazy. I mean, like, offensive coaches right now, and there's a lot of bad offensive coaches, don't get me wrong, but it just feels as though even the great defensive coaches in this league right now, after watching that game, it's like, God, this is just – the league feels like it's passed them by. Now, there's going to be people push back, say, what about DeMeco Ryans? What about – yeah, I mean –
you need an elite offensive coordinator, I think.
If you have your quarterback, like even Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, you can be up there, right? You can be elite. But when it is on you as a coach because you're down, you're injured, like the Colts are a playoff team this morning, and they've had their backup quarterback 90% of the season, and a rookie head coach. I mean, that is something to be said versus two of the greatest coaches in NFL history, stats-wise, Tomlin and Belichick, and it feels like they can't even move the ball. And so if you are a young defensive coach right now in the NFL and your goal is to become a head coach, you have got to show me and ownership and other people like that you have an understanding of offensive football. You prioritize offensive football, even from the defensive side. Like, that was, to me, the biggest takeaway from, like, a really crappy game that really is kind of not meaningful in the long run. Neither of these teams are Super Bowl teams. Steelers are a fringe playoff team. Missing, neither of them have their franchise quarterback right now, whether, Pittsburgh it's because of injury or because Patriots just don't have one. So to me, that's what it felt like. It felt like neither of these teams are just well coached right now. And it's crazy because they are two of the greatest coaches in the NFL. And my final thing, I'll put it back to you, Dan, is at least Belichick has this going for him. No one on the Belichick sideline, and they have Juju Smith-Schuster, who's an ultimate like diva, behaves the way the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers behave. You have dudes on your team that like quit, that like have they look like a bunch of high school prima donnas. And I know I feel like an old guy yelling at the clouds right now, but that is, to me, a direct reflection of the coach. And Pittsburgh, a lot like the Chicagos, the Clevelands, Detroit's, that is a hard-nosed, we work for our pennies and we work for our money. And I feel like enough's enough. That is Tomlin's MO. We find great wide receivers and they become divas overnight.
That is why I led with the Tomlin situation out of this game. There's a ton of different areas we could go with this game. The problem starting with the quarterback, the bad snaps yet again for like the fourth straight week from your starting center, the defensive mishaps, once again, offensive procedural penalties in December. They can't get. Last week they had about 5 different situations where they couldn't get 11 men on the field. They either had 10 or 12. Several different that is coaching. This is coaching. That's a coaching problem. You can't blame this on Mitch Trubisky. You can't blame this on Kenny Pickett. They are not good. We've already seen that at this point. Maybe Kenny can be good. I still don't know. The jury's out on that. But it doesn't even matter. There aren't things in place for this to go well regardless, because they have the talent on this team. No question about it. You talk about the roster. What could Shane Steichen do with this roster? What could Kyle Shanahan be doing with this roster? You cannot tell me
a top
that this
5-7 roster in the league. Yeah.
Yes.
Pittsburgh has a definitely top 7. I mean, top 5, I'd have to really look at it, but like 100% top 10 roster in the league.
And when things are overall going fairly well and you've got players acting like divas, that's where I get really pissed. It really upsets me when Chase Claypool, when we're driving down the fourth quarter of a game to win it, is celebrating instead of hustling back to the line so that we can get the snap, right? That happened, a few years ago. Yeah. Those types of situations, Antonio Brown's antics, when the team is good. I understand it a little bit more as the season's gone on because they're not utilizing their playmakers at all. Like I have empathy for George Pickens a little bit. He's a super talented guy. Now, I'm not making excuses for what, like, you still at the end of the day have to conduct yourself like a professional. You are part of a bigger team. You know, you have to still try and win the game because it's about winning football. That's your job. Um, I still, at the end of the day, I understand being a young guy with that much talent and seeing the ineptitude of an entire coaching staff, even after they fire Matt Canada.
Yeah.
I can understand how maybe the frustration for a lesser, not, we can't expect everybody to be like us or to be like, the ultimate Larry Fitzgerald professional
Yeah.
in the league. So I understand there's different, but that's the thing, is like, it all does come back to coaching at the end of the day. And that's why we're at the point where I personally think that it's quite possible that it's just time to move on for those reasons and those reasons alone. Not to say the man still can't coach.
Yeah.
Tomlin could get fired going into next year and get a job with the Bears or the Commanders or something, and
to
have
bring
success.
stability and bring like, hey, I'm an adult in the room. We're going to go from a dumpster fire to a stable organization, because Tomlin 100% I think could do that to most of the dumpster fire teams in the league. 100%.
Yeah. And even if he has amazing success like Andy Reid has with Kansas City, that still doesn't mean that it was going to go that way with Pittsburgh. It might just be that it's run its course. And that's why Andy Reid, leaving Philadelphia, getting fired. He's like, I think this is the best comparison because Andy Reid is a bona fide Hall of Famer, and so is Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
Andy Reid's better than Mike Tomlin, but they fired him after, albeit a down season, a 4-win season, I believe. So it's not quite what Tomlin's experiencing right now, but 1 4-win season after, multiple trips to the Super Bowl. The Philadelphia Eagles just said, I think it's time. I think it's time we just move off of Andy Reid. And can you say that was the wrong move, even though Andy Reid is now gone to Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes? They did it with Doug Peterson, and they did it again with Nick Sirianni. And then Doug Peterson, another example, they let him go after
because it felt like it just had run its course and it lost the magic.
Sometimes you just have to accept when maybe it's just not right anymore for you. And I worry that the Pittsburgh Steelers, being who they are, being sometimes stuck in their ways, won't allow themselves to have that type of introspection, because there is sometimes a holier than thou thing where, like, we don't make changes, and for just because of the fact we don't make changes, we're badass. That's not necessarily making the right changes. Sometimes makes you badass.
You posted something on Twitter, I think, that speaks to that as well. The Steelers are now one of 8 teams that haven't won a playoff game since 2016. And the teams
I woke
on
up
that
this morning and looked that up because
I was like, teams on that list
are going to do it again.
Ugly. I mean, it is the bottom of the barrel, and you wouldn't necessarily associate Pittsburgh with those teams. But again, I can make an argument if I'm a Steelers fan. Yes, we've been to the playoffs, and yes, Tomlin is kept us relevant, but we have not had any legitimate success in the better half of now almost a decade. Like, you're talking about 8 years.
Yep.
And so I think that's another fair criticism. And I think you're 100% right. The Andy Reid thing, that didn't really hit me, but it feels almost mirror similarities. Like, Tomlin won a Super Bowl, Andy went to more, but you had this feeling of like, it just feels like, you know what, it's not right. And if Tomlin goes on, Tomlin in a Washington, in a New Orleans, in a Chicago, in a place that like just needs like an adult in the room,
Vegas,
a complete stability, like, you know what I mean? The Panthers, where he can look David Tepper in the eye and be like, shut the fuck up. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, he'd be successful. He absolutely would. The Chargers, like, again, like, we need just to get control of our program. He'd be very successful. Again, is Tomlin the type of guy that maybe is going to elevate you to multiple Super Bowls? It doesn't feel like any defensive coach right now is going to do that. Not even Bill Belichick. Like, to go back to my argument to start, Dan, I'd also ask you this, as we're just talking about the Steelers here, it's not really worth talking about the Patriots. I think with the Patriots, that discussion will come when we actually know if they're moving on from Bill or not. right now with the Patriots, it feels very much like they're going to be an off-season storyline. Like, we're going to talk a ton about them once the season's over. So I don't want to focus on that now. Pittsburgh still has a chance to make the playoffs. And it's starting to feel like a little bit, Dan, honestly, Pittsburgh and New Orleans Saints fans should feel the same. Yes, we can make the playoffs, and yes, we probably should make the playoffs. But for the long-term health of your organization, maybe the best thing is not to make the playoffs. Like, both of these teams right now feel like they just need complete and utter, full, take the cartridge out, blow on it, resets. You know what I mean? Like, pull the plug on the computer. You know, just refreshing isn't going to work. Just rip it out and, turn the phone off for 10 minutes and let it cool off. And it's crazy with Mike Tomlin that we're at that point, especially a week and a half ago. They were 7-4, and it was like, hey, Tomlin's doing a pretty good job here. You know what I mean? He fired his offensive coordinator, and you're you know what I mean? You're kind of coaching your butt off to get this.
We were talking about him potentially being coach of the year a month ago.
Well,
it's crazy.
And
how the turntables, to quote Michael Scott,
And again, but that's how bad these losses are. These were guaranteed wins. And not only and what's bad about it is when you have wins like this that are in front of you on your schedule, and you lose them in the ways they lost them, you should win these games no matter who's your quarterback. These are bad teams you're playing right now. And you're the flipping Pittsburgh Steelers, and you're at home.
I mean, Bailey Zappi won.
Yeah, it's like that. That's just unacceptable. It really is. And I just think Pittsburgh's one of those teams right now that if they made monumental moves, if Pittsburgh called the Chicago Bears and said, "We fired Mike Tomlin, we're hiring Eric Bieniemy, and we want Caleb Williams. We'll give you the next 2 first-round picks." They could do it because they have so much talent on the rest of that roster. They could give up a Minkah Fitzpatrick and multiple firsts to the Bears and still have one of the most talented rosters in the league. And it just all of a sudden would feel like, oh my God, you have those weapons, Freiermuth, George Pickens, you know what I mean? And now you get a Caleb Williams in there with an offensive coach and that defense with Watt still in his prime. Like, all of a sudden, Pittsburgh on the drop of a dime could go from to, oh my God, they are an absolute legit contender in the AFC, overnight. And they're one of the few teams in the NFL that feels like with simple moves like that could legitimately go from low ceiling to no, Super Bowl, legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. And with a quarterback on a rookie deal, you can keep paying all these stars that are around Pittsburgh. I just don't know if they're an organization that would do that.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, to their credit, they finally fired a coach mid-season, for the first time. Yeah. So maybe there is a sign of them, coming to terms with the situation that they find themselves in. It's just, and to be clear about this, I'm not necessarily even saying that I want Mike Tomlin gone.
Yeah,
I just think the conversation needs to be had.
Yeah,
I think there needs to be some sort of accountability, because I feel for too long that they've always felt safe and there's no sense of urgency, at least from the fan base's perspective, in a lot of his answers at the press conference. And I know you have to keep things close to the vest. You can't, Tomlin never wants to show a sign of panic. They always pride themselves on being, even keeled. Sometimes it pays to show that you understand the circumstances and the situation you're in by showing a little bit of human element to it and expressing, no, there's urgency here. There is absolute urgency needed. An answer like this too shall pass and we'll be fine. And, he said in his post-game press conference, we'll be this is who we are.
Yeah.
We rise to this occasion. It's like, is this who you are? What you are is a team that hasn't won a playoff game in 7 years.
Yeah.
You're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You say the standard is the standard. What is the standard? What is it anymore?
The standard is winning as many playoff games as the Chicago Bears in the last 7 years.
Exactly. I mean, the list is the Cardinals, Falcons, Panthers, Bears, Broncos, Lions, Raiders, Dolphins, and Commanders. Those are the teams, along with Pittsburgh, that haven't won a playoff game since 2016.
Not a list.
It's bad. And I just feel like they're one of the few teams that never shows outwardly that they're hurting, and in a way that's a good thing, but in another way it's not, because it makes people wonder, are they realistic about what their situation is? Do they know truly what they're dealing with, or do they
just
really feel like, it's
and
fine,
part of it
we're
is
still 7-6, you know,
part of it is they're a giant cash cow. You know what I mean? Like the Steelers are such a giant brand behind the Packers. Like the Steelers might be the largest national brand. I mean, they fill up stadiums all across the country.
Cowboys,
Cowboys, Packers, Steelers, Raiders. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, they're a giant, giant brand. You just keep making those terrible towels. They keep buying them. So it's a little bit, I think, like that. But the reason why I would push if I was inside the Steelers organization, I had any sway, or I was a diehard about a quick and easy, fast reset, is because I think that's what Pittsburgh could get behind and say, hey, we made two swift, quick decisions. We moved off of a guy. We moved on to a guy really quickly who's a coveted offensive coach, and Eric Bieniemy. I think the conversation would have to be making Tomlin feel like he needs to just step down. Like this is a mutual, it's just run its course. I will be a Steeler for life, but like I need to take some time away. I'm going to take a couple years away from coaching or whatever Tomlin wants to do. Bieniemy steps in. You go get Caleb Williams. You know what I mean? If you did two sharp moves like that, it's not like, oh, we're blowing it all up and we're now in chaos. We're the Pittsburgh Steelers in chaos. So I think it's more like if you could sell it to your ownership and your leadership like that, I think it's possible that the Pittsburgh Steelers could look at that and be like, no, this could still be perceived as like, we're a buttoned-up, smart organization, because that's not desperate. You know what I mean? It's not desperate to just like, oh, we're firing coaches mid-season. Now things are getting out of hand and things are chaos. There's leaks everywhere. Those, like, all Pittsburgh has to do is make two really quick, sharp, pinpoint decision moves. And it's like they're back to being buttoned up and being efficient and being the Pittsburgh Steelers. But you're right. I just don't know if it's going to happen. Part of it is, I think you don't move on from Tomlin and keep Pickett, right? Like, I mean, that's a disaster. You don't get Pickett another head coach because he's not talented enough.
What do you do with him, though? I mean, maybe he's a backup, but like, you're gonna trade him? Like, who?
You know what I mean? Yeah, he's on a rookie scale. I think you write it off. You try to trade him for a 6th rounder to, someone who will look at him as like a young projected backup to like sit behind someone just in case they get injured. You know what I mean? Like he could find a way to Denver, you know what I mean? Or somewhere it's like, all right, I'm going to go back him up, find his way to, the Chargers. Oh, I'm going to sit behind Herbert for 2 years. And in case he misses a game, we have a guy, like there's room, there's places for that. Like Mitch ending up in Buffalo right after you move down from Mitch. Like, I think there's places for him to go. But I think, like, to me, that's what I would be afraid of as I'm a Steelers fan. Like, oh, no. If we're moving on from Tomlin, I want sharp, quick, decisions on Kenny and the other things to like completely change the faces and say, hey, we gave you 2 years post Big Ben. And last year was really rough. And then you went on a win streak and it kind of saved your jobs. And then this year kind of was just so ugly and messy. And it's becoming now really gross here down the stretch that we want to move on. Kenny's not the guy. Let's make positive moves on from both of them and just go forward.
Aside from the, problematic penalties, did you watch the full game? Did you watch the ending of it? Okay.
Oh yeah. The 4th and 1 go route.
Yeah, the 4th and 2. Yeah.
All right, 4th and 2. Yeah.
They had 4th and 2 twice. Once was in the red zone. And
the one was
Mitch
pass
shoveled
to
it to Jalen Warren.
Yeah,
and it was an awful play. I mean, and look, I knew this. Like, I knew getting rid of Matt Canada was just a step. That the offense wasn't going to be fixed. So this doesn't surprise me that the offense is, had one good game when it bounced back, and then has since reverted back. They had everyone in the deep in the end zone on that play. You needed 2 yards, so there wasn't even room for a play to be made. Then the biggest problem. So there were two. The play calling situation here, but Tomlin's game management, which has been bad I've had issues with it since he became the coach. Like, that is something that he has really not improved at. He's just not good at managing his timeouts and managing the game. But the end of the game there, you have a 3rd and 2, right? Right before the 2-minute warning. They go empty. And I tweeted this out in the moment. I was like, they're going empty on 3rd and 2 when they have a 2-minute warning. You run the ball. If you don't get the first down, you then have the 2-minute warning to discuss your 4th down play.
Yep.
But instead, they throw an incomplete pass. So now they have to go with their 4th down play before the 2-minute warning. And their 4th down play is a go route to Deontay Johnson, about a 10% probability.
Especially with Mitch. It's not even with your more accurate quarterback of Kenny. Yeah. And I'll say this, Dan, what surprised me during the game, and again, this is on Tomlin, I would imagine him to make this decision. You fire Matt Canada, great. But now your offensive coordinator is the younger guy, but he's not even calling the plays. It's an older guy who they went with him to call plays because the last time he called plays was like he has experience doing it, but it was like 2017.
Yeah.
So,
but he was the quarterback coach and he had experience. He had a relationship with the quarterback.
You don't even give it to one guy and just say, all right, let's see what you got. Like, at least give the younger guy who you named the offensive coordinator the chance. But again, that's Tomlin's conservativeness. Like, well, he has the experience, so we're going to go with him. But we're going to give it to you because you're the younger guy and you're the next in line. It's just to me, that's not only is that a fault on the people who've taken over for Matt Canada directly, but that falls on Tomlin 100%. That you've created this staggered, weird structure now, even of like, wait a minute, he's my OC, but he's calling the plays. And oh, goody, the last time he called plays was for like the Giants in 2017. Oh yeah, those great Giants teams of 2017. Yeah, they were electric on offense. So I'm with you, Dan. And again, all of that falls on Mike. It all falls on Mike. It's the hardest
place to be because there's no clear direction, right? Like, some teams, it's so obvious, like, we just got to blow it up and start from scratch. That's easy to get, like, it's easy to come to those determinations. It's easy to say, oh, we just need a new head coach. This is hard. It's hard to determine exactly what the right fix is here. But at a bare minimum, Tomlin needs to alleviate a lot of his staff or shuffle roles around and bring in some top-notch shoes, because not only do they have the cheapest staff in the league, they have the smallest staff, Mark. He only has 9 other coaches. Tomlin has had his whole career the smallest staff. Maybe, Mike, because he always talks about looking for, being open to changes and changing things. Maybe this is the change that's needed, is you need more guys on your staff. You need more people in your ear. You need to be able to rely on others and delegate more, instead of feeling like you have to be the guy that dictates everything. Because it really does seem like he's not comfortable giving 100% autonomy to a play caller or to a defensive guy. Maybe he needs to step back, be the CEO on the sidelines for once, so he can focus on his game management versus the tedious aspects of play calling. But that requires a top-notch dude. Yeah, and they got to make a splash.
To put a button on it for you, and just in my thoughts, if right now, if it were me and I was in charge of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would 100% be looking to make those 2 clean moves. And I would try to do it in a way where Tomlin, we can leave on really amicable terms and praise him and laud him like the Eagles did with Andy Reid in this just like legend. We may regret this, but it just, after 2 years after Big Ben and 7 years straight of not winning a playoff game, we as the Pittsburgh Steelers organization are going to move on from Mike Tomlin, and he will be a Steeler for life or whatever. And then I would become extremely aggressive in going and getting the offense, a guy like a Bieniemy, a Ben Johnson. The Steelers, if you are a coach, prospective coach,
it's the best job.
It is a dream job, especially with that defense, those offensive weapons, and if you come in with an okay from the organization, hey, we're going to be aggressive in trying to trade up. Maybe not get all the way to number 1, but go getting a Drake May, in that top 5. Go maybe finding a way to get a Bo Nix or someone else, and just saying we're gonna try to get you the guy you want to, or hell, the Steelers even at this point in time feel like they're a Kirk Cousins away from being battling for an AFC Championship game. So I'd prefer them to go the young route, but that's what I would push for. And unless Tomlin really turns it around here towards the end of the season, I would continue to push for that. We'll have to wait and see.
That's the weird thing too, is that they could still make the playoffs, right? And my response to that at this point is, so what?
Yeah.
So what? Who cares?
Yeah, it's a low ceiling.
They're not making a run, you know. So I agree with what you said at the beginning about, it's almost being better. I'll just ask you this as we move on. Steelers have the Colts, the Bengals, the Seahawks, and the Ravens to end the season. I mean,
Colts,
do they make
Bengals,
the playoffs?
Seahawks,
do they make
Ravens.
the playoffs? I honestly, where it stands, I say
you probably
no.
got to get to 10.
I feel like they're 9-8 at best at this point.
You got to get to 10. It feels like now in the AFC.
Yeah, for sure. You got to go 3-1.
And
the
after
Colts are playing really well.
A week and a half ago, they were a lock to make the playoffs because these were 2 guaranteed wins. And then it's like, oh, you got to win one more game and you'll be fine. And now I don't see how they win 3 of those 4. I really don't.
Yeah, it's super tough. I mean, the Seahawks game is going to be difficult. The Colts is not a slam dunk.
No,
what we saw from
at this point in
Jake
time,
Browning.
Point in time, I would say they definitely lose to the Colts and to the Ravens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then they finish 9-8, just like they did last year, and miss the playoffs by maybe they're the 8 or 9 seed, mid-round pick. And like you said, I mean, what are they going to do with the 16th overall pick? Honestly, I just don't.
They need to.
They're going to have to do something with it.
They need to call my guy Ryan Poles, and they need to say, "Here's Minkah Fitzpatrick, this year's first, next year's first, and next year's second, or something like that. Let's make a deal."
Well, this has obviously been a Steelers focused show, but we'll end it with a couple of
a quick little look ahead
and bets for this upcoming week, because we've got a couple interesting matchups here to look forward to, and we picked 2 primary ones that we wanted to look at afterwards. But first, let's hear what your lock and what your upset of the week is. I'll give mine, and then we'll talk about these 2 matchups.
We didn't discuss this, so we might have the same. We might have completely different things. My lock of the week is Browns -3. Bad weather in Cleveland. It could be sleeting, icy, gross. Joe Flacco, big arm Joe. And the Jaguars, they're saying Lawrence might be a game time decision. If he is, I think that's a disaster for the Jags. And if he doesn't play, it's a disaster for the Jags. So I'm 100% on Cleveland -3. If you can get Cleveland at -3, if the line starts creeping to 4 or 5, then depending if Lawrence plays, it could be tasty where the Jags might cover. But I think it's low scoring. I think it's ugly. And no matter what, I mean, the Jags weren't going to beat the Bengals, it felt like, even if Trevor Lawrence didn't get injured. So they're reeling right now. They don't have Christian Kirk. It's going to be a disaster weather game. And so I think this just screams Browns -3 is my lock with Joe Flacco. Who would have thought I would have said that 3 months ago? That wild. The Browns are going to be beating the Jaguars at with a -3 in Cleveland with Joe Flacco. That's where we're at, people.
God, the NFL never disappoints, right?
Yeah.
I was very close to picking Houston -3.5 at the Jets.
Okay.
I felt really good about that, but I pivoted. And this is probably what a lot of people consider the closest matchup potentially of the weekend slate. I feel very confident that Kansas City at home is going to not only take care of business, the spread is barely a money line. It's -1.
-1, yeah.
How is Kansas City only favored by 1? I wonder if something's going on.
Because they can't complete a ball beyond 20 yards, Dan. That's probably why.
The Bills are just bad.
No. And they match up well against the Bills.
At home, they're coming off of a really pretty
ugly
embarrassing loss. Like, I trust Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes to get it right this game at home against a hapless Bills team. Honestly, at this point, I feel -1 is a steal right there. I would take them by 4 easily. And so, yeah, I think Chiefs win by close to double digits.
Love
like
it.
7 to 10 points.
Love it. I think
that's my lock. My upset is the Colts upsetting the Bengals. Colts are getting +2.5 right now. This is at least based on Caesar's sports book.
It's in Cincy.
favored by 2.5. It is in
Cincy's
Cincy, and
favored.
they've been playing pretty well. But the Colts defense lately, Mark, the last month, they have been like a shutdown unit, like really top notch. And so they're playing a backup quarterback in Cincy. Cincy's defense isn't much to speak of. And so it's going to be a
The
pretty
Jake
close
Browning
game.
come back
But
to
I
earth
think the
game.
Colts are going to do it. I think the
Yeah, I
Colts are going to do
agree.
it. And then they're going to go to 8-5 and go to Pittsburgh and probably be Pittsburgh. They could be 9-5.
I agree. I
That's
think
crazy.
the Colts are the play 100%. 100%. But my upset, Rams plus 7.5. Now,
oh man, oh baby,
this is, I know
you and the LA got this love affair going. Dude.
I can't quit him. But everyone's saying, I know what everyone's saying. Like, wait, come on, Mark, don't be dumb. I don't think this is dumb. Since Mark Andrews went out, he can't throw for over 200 yards. I mean, Lamar has struggled to move the ball post Mark Andrews.
This is true.
The Rams, this is going to be an ugly weather game. So I know that doesn't help the Rams as a dome team, LA. I know it's the early window, all of that. But this is one of those where it's so easy to say Ravens going to crush the Rams. They're off a bye. I think they come out a little sluggish. I think the Ravens win, but I think it's one of those where like, wait a minute. Are you looking at the score and it's the third quarter and the Rams are up 17-13 right now and the Ravens, like what the hell is going on in that game? Ravens score a touchdown. They win. Stafford throws a bad pick. Ravens win. But that 7.5 is a big number. You get the hook with the half.
Number, yeah.
You get the hook with the half. So I think I like the Rams at 7.5. I think it's one of those games in the early window. You're just going to put, pick, Ravens, easy win. And then you're going to look at it and be like, what the hell is going on in Baltimore? And you'll realize it's a rainstorm, no Mark Andrews, and it's just an ugly football game. Yeah,
that very well could happen.
Sluggish Ravens team off the bye. I'm betting on that too. Even though John Harbaugh is good off the bye, I'm gunning for sluggish off the bye.
Yeah, there you go.
Bills, I'm a bad gambler.
Bills, Chiefs, and Cowboys, Eagles are the two big matchups we wanted to talk about. So let's close out the show with our thoughts on those matchups real quick. You already heard that I think Kansas City's going to beat the Bills pretty handily. So I'll toss it to you for that matchup. How do you see this one playing out?
I had no idea. Like
either
honestly,
way,
it's just one of those. I don't have a read on it. Both teams are coming off of tough losses. Both teams feel like they are both desperate for a win and a good performance in a win.
The Bills are playing for their season, though, right?
Bills are playing for their season.
100%
playing for their season. So my gut says that Kansas City they just know how to beat the Bills. You know what I mean? Like if this was like Cincy and Joe Burrow, like I'd be like, oh, Joey B is going to go in there and just upset, like crush them. You know what I mean? But the Bills don't have that. So I'll pick Kansas City, but I will say this. I really think this is going to be one of those games where if this game ends up being 24-23, Bills win, the Josh Allen drive, kick a field goal, it wouldn't shock me at all because the Chiefs offense feels so disjointed right now. Their best bet is to run the ball some more, and then find Kelsey. They can do that against the Bills defense, but I think the Bills are going to be trying to swing for the fences and knockout blows. Kansas City's going to be playing conservative in the sense of like, we just got to get our offense back to working. So that could favor the Bills early, getting a lead in this game, and then who knows? But I don't have a great read on it. I'll take Kansas City. If you made me pick a winner, I'd take Kansas City, but barely. I don't love it.
It should be a good game nonetheless. And now it seems that the weather is going to be normal, so there shouldn't be any like major surprises. So both teams will be going in kind of with an even slate there. The Eagles on the road at the Cowboys. Dallas is favored by 3.5 points in this game. I personally take the Eagles to win it. And so, again, a similar story with the Eagles and the Chiefs, both, coming into this game hungry to, prove that they're not what they showed last week.
Yep.
The Eagles had a tough loss to another, team contending for that 1 seed, being the San Francisco 49ers. Now the Dallas Cowboys, you're in their house, and if they beat you, then they're ahead of you in the seeding. So this is big for the Eagles in many ways. And I just see them responding well to this matchup, this adversity. again, we haven't seen the Cowboys beat a good team this year. And we've seen the Eagles go toe to toe. Now, obviously, they got wrecked last week, but we've seen them beat good teams and go toe to toe with some of the best. And so I think the Eagles kind of get right in this one. They're also 5-1 on the road. How about that? Cowboys are 6-0 at home. So something has to give here in this situation. But I'm confident in the Eagles not only covering that 3.5 points, but winning outright. So I would take the money line, honestly, if it were to talk about betting. But just in general, Eagles are just a better team overall.
I'm 100% with you. 100% with you. I think that I think the Eagles losing last week was good for them in this game, like going into this game. And I think
sure,
I'm not going to believe in Dallas till I see it. If Dallas beats the Eagles and plays well, well then I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board and really start considering Dallas as a legitimate NFC contender. Like they've turned things around. But until I see that happen, I'm going to stick with the fact that I believe in the Eagles. I believe in the Niners. I believe in the Lions. Don't believe in the Cowboys yet. If Dak plays well and they win, Dak MVP thing is going to, if you really feel like Dallas is going to win and Dak's going to play well, I know he's already like the betting favorite with Brock Purdy, but get it now because it's only going to get, the odds are only going to get worse for you if he wins this game and balls out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm in total agreement with you there on that one. So yeah, this is a put up or shut up time for the Dallas Cowboys to prove that they have what it takes to go toe to toe with not only the best in the league, but the best in their own division in this one, and show that they can make a playoff run this year. So that'll do it for our essential recap on Thursday Night Football, if you will. Really upset I didn't get to see Sticks performing. That was probably the highlight of the game, and they didn't show it on TV. So yeah, what the heck, man? Get with it. But nonetheless, a lot to ponder there in Pittsburgh, and the Bears now sitting pretty with that number 1 overall pick, thanks in part to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That'll do it for this episode of the Football Lounge. We'll see you back here on Monday for our Week 14 recap.